Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous. And here's his story, really more of a question. I just thought I and many of your listeners would be very interested if you could elaborate on the comment in the Drunkie video that your dad is even worse than your mom. Anonymous. Quick, I've discussed this a lot, I think, on the channel, but I'll go through it again, especially after hearing that and being reminded, or if it was the first time you heard my mother, that phone call from Narcissistic Mother that I replayed yesterday, it could be shocking to you. And it could be confusing when I said my father is worse than my mom. That is 100% still true. It is absolutely accurate. Here's why. Because much like you want to know if somebody's racist or bigoted, or an actual Nazi, when they put on like Nazi paraphernalia or they put on a white robe and hat, they're telling you what they are. They're identifying themselves as bigot, racist, and dangerous. Okay? They're not your problem because you know what they are. You know what to expect from them. That's my mother. My mother's basically out there. She can't hide what she is. My mother's a borderline, but she has such a lack of a filter. She's so over the top. She fools nobody. My mother doesn't fool anybody. Anybody. It's just by sheer will and fear of a freak out that she gets away with anything. If my mother wasn't married to my father, or if my father wasn't around, nobody would talk to my mother. Ever, ever, ever. My mother's all drama, all chaos, all of the time. She's violent. She's drunk. She's loud. There's nothing she won't say to you. She's insulting. She's not getting by anybody. She's not fooling anybody. That's not my mother. And as physically and sexually violent as my mother is and was to me, verbally, all of it, it was to me and directly to me. The worst of it was always, at home. Well, it could happen anywhere with the beatings and the yelling and the name calling. But she wasn't fooling anybody. See, my father's the one who gets the pity off of being married to her. The poor him. The poor you. All this he has to dealing with this crazy wife. Meanwhile, he's pulling the strings the entire time. See, it's my father who does all the behind the scenes backstabbing. It's my father who tells my ex-wife what to say and how to lie and how to screw me over. It's my father who sits there planning on how to punish me. That's my father. That's why he's worse. It's my father who took my daughter from me for getting divorced. It's all my father who does this. Meanwhile, playing the nice guy. My mother would never be able to scam somebody's house away from them. She doesn't have the skills to do it. She has no subtlety. She has no way of tricking people. She is what, in her crazy mind, she thinks she is. See, the problem, my mother doesn't realize what an idiot she comes across as. What a chaotic force she comes across as. And my father is the counterbalance to that makes her tolerable, which makes him even worse because he's using her and everybody else to get his way. to scam your house away from you, to scam your life fortune away from you, to fucking scam to ogle over your wife or your kids from the window as he can't stop jerking himself off from the window. My father's worse. He's dangerous because he's the one planning it. He's the one, despite all this, despite decades and decades and decades of this woman, all he could do was figure out ways to get my daughter away from me, to punish me for some made-up offense. There's always got to be a made-up offense. You see, my mother's craziness is just over me. My mother doesn't go out and tell my ex-wife, say this, that, or the other thing about your father. She'll put ideas in about Charlene, but not about me. My mother, you could see my mother's from the phone call from Narcissistic Mother. It's all about me and me loving her, me like fawning over her. It's sick. It's sick when you consider the relationship we had and the history. But as sick and violent and disgusting and twisted as it was, I was never, ever, ever tricked by her. It's obvious what was going on. It was obvious to anybody going around how nuts she was, anybody around her. She is a true borderline. Constant drama, constant fighting, constant me. And then my father will be like, Lord, in public, Lord, act like he's trying to get this under control. Meanwhile, and then look at the people like that. Or he'd freak out and run away, like he'd have his blow up, like I can't take it anymore, and run. And oh, poor Brian. That's how he gets his supply. That's why it's so much worse. He's like walking around with my mother, being married to my mother is like walking around with a dangerous pit bull. One of these people that have these dangerous pit bulls and tell you, oh, it's never snaps, and it's trying to gain power through the dog. And my father does gain power through his dog, through his pit bull, through pity. It's pity power. It's look how wonderful Brian is power, taking care of his piece of shit son's kid who ran away with his whore to South Florida. It's my father who planned all the domestic, tried to set my wife up to put me on domestic violence, my ex-wife on domestic violence. It's my father who makes up all this shit. He's the brains behind the operation. He's the brain. My mother don't have the brains to figure to get out of a wet paper bag. She doesn't. The chaos in her head is too overwhelming. She can't do it. She gets distracted like that. You know what she is. You know what my mother is 2 seconds into meeting her. It's that simple. It's that easy. But when you're covert like my father is, and planning and calculating, and it's all about him and his supply, and it's about my mother's supply too, but my mother's supply is something sick about me. My mother truly hates my ex-wife. Never liked. My mother thinks my ex-wife is pure shit. And that's what she told me for 14 years. I know she can't stand her, okay? And from when I did talk to him, when I was talking to Erin, the things I would get out of Erin about the relationship, about how my mother was acting, nothing had changed. My mother still puts herself above everyone else. She sees Erin as competition to her. But because my mother can't, deep down, function without my father, she lets my father play this game, this manipulation game, where he terrorizes his oldest son, because his oldest son looks like his wife's brilliant father, and he's just a big fucking dummy. Oh, no, he's very good at manipulating, but as far as, and he's good at building stuff, and he's good at that stuff, but outside of that, he's a fucking idiot. He's an idiot. He's a worker bee trying to play queen bee, and he's not. But he's manipulative enough to trick other people, and that's what really makes him dangerous, because he is the brains, for whatever you want to call it, behind the operation, behind the lying, behind the gaslighting, behind the planning, behind all of it taking my daughter away from me. It's him. And as sick as that is, and as sad as it is, seeing how outwardly violent and crazy my mother is, that he could be worse, but he is. Because he's pulling the strings, and he's the one on her leash. So I hope that clears it up and answers some question and answers that question. Thank you for your contribution and your question, Anonymous. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it successful, growing, and supported, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from you guys. Without you, all of this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been The Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.